Most people talk too much about plans and too little about progress. They announce goals before they earn results. They seek approval before they build discipline. And in doing so, they leak energy that should have been invested in action. Most people feel an urge to talk about what they are doing before anything meaningful has been done. They announce plans, describe goals, and explain visions as if words alone move life forward. But progress does not respond to announcements. Progress responds to discipline. The moment you begin to speak too early, you trade power for comfort. You feel productive without producing, and that feeling becomes a dangerous substitute for real effort. When you keep your plans to yourself, something remarkable happens. Your energy stays intact. Instead of being scattered across conversations, opinions, and reactions, it is concentrated into action. Silence sharpens focus. It removes the need to perform for others and replaces it with the responsibility to perform for yourself. And that responsibility is where growth begins. Talking invites feedback, and most feedback comes from people who are not living the life you want. They don't see your vision, they see your past. They measure your future using old versions of you. This is not because they are cruel, but because human beings judge based on evidence. When your evidence is still under construction, their doubt becomes noise. Silence protects you from that noise while you build something real. There is also a subtle psychological trap in speaking too soon. When you tell people what you plan to do, your mind receives a small reward, similar to achievement. You feel acknowledged. You feel ambitious. But that reward arrives before the work, and it weakens the hunger required to follow through. The discipline to continue fades because the mind believes progress has already been made. Quiet work avoids this trap. It keeps the reward at the end, where it belongs. Real confidence does not need witnesses. It grows in private moments when no one is watching. It is built when you show up tired and still do the work, when motivation is low and standards are high, when excuses are available but ignored. These moments rarely make good stories, but they make strong people. And strong people do not need to explain themselves. When you stop telling people what you do, you begin listening to something far more important, your own behavior. You become honest with yourself. Did you do what you promised? Did you use the day wisely? Did you improve even slightly? These questions develop self-respect, and self-respect becomes the foundation of all lasting success. Without it, applause feels empty. With it, silence feels powerful. The world is full of people who talk about change but never change. They speak of discipline but live casually. They describe goals but repeat habits. Over time, words lose credibility, even to themselves. Quiet action, on the other hand, builds trust internally. Every small promise kept strengthens belief. Every consistent effort adds weight to character. Eventually, that character becomes visible without explanation. There is also timing to consider. Every worthwhile pursuit has a season of invisibility. Seeds grow underground before they ever break the surface. If you dig them up too early to show someone, you interrupt the process. Growth requires patience. Silence gives your work time to mature. When results finally appear, they arrive whole, undeniable, and respected. People don't remember what you said you were going to do. They remember what you did. They remember consistency, results, and presence. A life that speaks for itself does not need defending. It does not need validation. It simply stands. Working quietly does not mean living small. It means living deliberately. It means choosing progress over praise and substance over show. It means understanding that the strongest moves are often the least visible at the beginning. And when success finally reveals itself, it carries a different weight. It feels earned, not announced. So keep your plans private. Let your habits do the talking. Let your discipline introduce you. In time, people will notice the difference in how you move, how you think, and how you live. And when they ask what you've been doing, you won't need a long explanation. Your life will already have answered for you. There comes a moment in personal growth when you realize that talking about your plans is not the same as building your life. In fact, the more you speak, the less pressure you feel to act. Words create an illusion of movement, but illusions do not change results. Action does. That is why restraint becomes a form of strength. Choosing not to tell people what you are doing is not secrecy. It is strategy. When you move in silence, you eliminate the need for approval. Approval is a subtle addiction. Once you taste it, you begin to shape your goals around applause instead of purpose. You start asking what will sound impressive instead of what will demand discipline. Silence cuts that addiction at the root. It returns control to where it belongs, your daily choices. Most people underestimate how fragile early commitment really is. At the beginning of any worthwhile effort, belief is still forming. Habits are not yet solid. Confidence has not yet been tested. This is the most dangerous time to invite opinions. A careless comment, a doubtful look, or an unnecessary comparison can weaken resolve. Not because the goal is wrong, because the foundation is still being built. Silence shields that foundation until it can support weight. There is also freedom in not explaining yourself. Explanation often turns into justification, and justification steals time and clarity. When you stop trying to make others understand your path, you move faster. You think clearer. You act with greater precision. Energy that would have been spent on conversations is redirected into consistency. And consistency, practiced long enough, always creates momentum. Quiet effort changes how you experience work. You no longer perform, you practice. You no longer seek recognition, you seek refinement. Each day becomes a private agreement between you and your standards. Did you honor them or not? This kind of accountability is far more powerful than public promises. Public promises can be forgotten. Private standards cannot be escaped. Another powerful effect of silence is patience. When no one knows what you are building, there is no pressure to rush results. You allow yourself to grow at a natural pace. You make mistakes without embarrassment. You adjust without defending. You learn without explaining. This creates mastery instead of stress, and mastery lasts far longer than excitement. People often believe they need to be seen to succeed. The truth is, you need to be prepared. Visibility without readiness creates exposure, not opportunity. Many fail not because they lack talent, but because they revealed themselves too early. Silence gives you time to sharpen skills, strengthen discipline, and develop resilience. By the time results appear, you are ready to carry them. Eventually, the work begins to show. Not in words, but in presence. Your confidence becomes quieter but stronger. Your decisions become firmer. Your habits become visible through outcomes. At that point, people start asking questions. Not out of curiosity, but out of respect. And when they do, you don't need to explain much. Your life has already told the story. The highest form of influence is not persuasion, it is example. People are moved more by what they observe than by what they are told. A disciplined life teaches without speaking. It challenges without criticizing. It inspires without announcing. This is the power of letting results speak. Keeping your plans to yourself also builds humility. You stop measuring progress by attention and start measuring it by improvement. You learn to value depth over display. Over time, this creates a calm confidence that does not depend on validation. You know what you've done. You know what you've overcome. And that knowledge is enough. In the end, silence is not about hiding. It is about honoring the process. It is about understanding that growth is sacred and easily disturbed. When you allow it to develop quietly, it becomes strong, stable, and undeniable. Then, when success finally arrives, it doesn't need an introduction. It arrives fully formed, carrying the weight of effort, discipline, and time. One of the greatest advantages you can give yourself in life is the ability to work without announcing your intentions. Most people believe visibility creates progress, but in truth, progress creates visibility. When you reverse this order, you place pressure on yourself before you have built the strength to carry it. Silence, on the other hand, allows you to grow without distortion. When you tell people what you are doing, you invite expectations. Expectations create timelines that may not match your process. They turn learning into performance and patience into pressure. Suddenly, instead of focusing on improvement, you begin worrying about appearances. This shift is subtle, but dangerous. It replaces long-term growth with short-term image. Silence removes that burden and returns your attention to what truly matters: the work. There is also wisdom in protecting your inner world. Every serious pursuit requires belief, and belief must be guarded in its early stages. Confidence does not arrive fully formed, It is built through repetition and proof. When others question your path, even unintentionally, they introduce doubt. Not because they are right, but because belief is still developing. By keeping your efforts private, you give belief time to mature into certainty. Quiet progress also builds resilience. When no one is watching, you learn to persist without applause. You develop endurance instead of dependence. This is crucial because life rarely rewards effort immediately. Those who rely on encouragement often quit when it disappears. Those who rely on discipline continue regardless. Silence trains you to move forward, even when the world is indifferent. Another overlooked benefit of not telling people what you do is clarity. Speaking too often invites comparison. You begin measuring your journey against someone else's timeline. Comparison creates confusion. It distorts priorities and weakens focus. When you remove external reference points, you are free to move at your own pace. You define success by growth, not by speed. This leads to better decisions and steadier progress. Working quietly also deepens commitment. When no one knows what you're building, quitting becomes harder to justify. There is no audience to explain failure to, no image to protect. There is only you and your standards. This private accountability is powerful. It forces honesty. Either you do the work or you face yourself. Over time, this builds integrity, and integrity becomes a source of strength. Silence also teaches patience, which is essential for mastery. Real skill is developed slowly, through practice that is often boring and repetitive. Talking about it adds pressure to accelerate results, but acceleration often sacrifices depth. When you allow yourself to remain unseen, you give yourself permission to learn properly. You make corrections without embarrassment and progress without stress. Eventually, the work reaches a point where it no longer needs protection. Results emerge naturally. They show up in how you think, how you speak, how you act. People notice consistency before they notice explanations. They feel confidence before they hear words. At this stage, silence transforms into presence. You don't need to tell people what you do, they can see it. This is where influence begins. Not through speeches or announcements, but through example. A disciplined life speaks a universal language. It demonstrates what is possible without forcing belief. It invites curiosity instead of demanding attention. This kind of influence is lasting because it is earned. In the end, choosing not to tell people what you do is an act of respect for the process, for your potential, and for your future self. It is a commitment to substance over show, depth over noise, and growth over praise. When you live this way, success doesn't arrive loudly. It arrives solid. And when it does, it doesn't need words to validate it. Your life has already done that work. There is a quiet discipline that separates those who build meaningful lives from those who only talk about them. It is the discipline of restraint, the ability to hold your plans, your efforts, and your progress without seeking immediate recognition. Most people underestimate how much power is lost through unnecessary disclosure. They speak not because it helps the work, but because it soothes the ego. Yet real growth requires the ego to step aside so character can take the lead. When you tell people what you are doing, you often place yourself in a position of defense. You feel the need to justify your pace, explain delays, and defend choices that require no explanation at all. This creates mental friction. Instead of directing energy into improvement, you spend it managing perceptions. Silence removes that burden. It allows you to move freely, guided by purpose rather than opinion. Another danger of speaking too soon is attachment to identity. The moment you announce a plan, you start identifying with it publicly. If the plan changes, as all intelligent plans must, you feel conflicted. You hesitate to adapt because adaptation looks like inconsistency. Silence keeps you flexible. It allows growth to evolve naturally without the pressure of maintaining an image. Adaptability is not weakness. It is intelligence applied over time. Quiet effort also teaches humility. When no one knows what you're building, you are forced to find satisfaction in the work itself. You learn to appreciate progress without applause. This shifts motivation from external validation to internal fulfillment. And internal motivation is far more reliable. It doesn't disappear when praise is absent. It grows stronger the more you rely on it. There is also a deeper emotional benefit to working in silence. You stop tying your self-worth to how others respond. Approval no longer defines success. Instead, improvement becomes the measure. This creates emotional stability. Wins don't inflate you, and setbacks don't destroy you. You remain steady because your value is anchored in effort, not attention. Most people want to be seen before they are ready. They mistake attention for opportunity. But attention without preparation exposes weaknesses rather than strengths. Silence gives you time to strengthen foundations, skills, habits, discipline, and mindset. When opportunity finally appears, you are not scrambling. You are ready. Preparation turns opportunity into progress. Silence also builds patience with the process of becoming. Growth is often slow and uncomfortable. It involves repetition, mistakes, and self-correction. When you keep this process private, you experience it more honestly. There is no need to pretend confidence when you feel uncertain. No need to appear strong when you are still learning. This honesty accelerates growth because it allows real improvement instead of performance. Over time, something interesting happens. The quiet work compounds. Small daily efforts accumulate into visible change. Your confidence becomes calm rather than loud. Your decisions become intentional rather than reactive. Others begin to notice, not because you announced anything, but because consistency leaves evidence. At this point, silence no longer hides you, it distinguishes you. When people eventually ask what you've been doing, the answer feels simple. You didn't do anything extraordinary. You just did what needed to be done, repeatedly, without distraction. And that is what most people fail to do. They talk instead of build. They explain instead of execute. They seek recognition instead of results. Choosing silence is not about secrecy. It is about respect. Respect for the process and for your own potential. It is about understanding that what matters most is not what people think today, but who you become over time. And that becoming happens quietly, patiently, and deliberately. In the end, a life built in silence stands firmly when revealed. It does not rely on words to justify itself. It carries the weight of effort, discipline, and consistency. And that weight is felt the moment results appear. No explanation required. One of the most overlooked strengths a person can develop is the ability to let progress happen without narration. In a world that rewards constant updates, opinions, and explanations, silence feels uncomfortable. Yet discomfort is often the doorway to growth. When you stop telling people what you are doing, you begin to live from intention rather than reaction. You stop performing your life and start building it. Talking creates pressure to maintain momentum that may not yet exist. You feel the need to prove consistency before consistency is formed. This leads to rushing, shortcuts, and burnout. Silence removes that urgency. It allows growth to be slow, uneven, and real. Real progress rarely moves in straight lines. It requires room for correction, rest, and reflection. Quiet work provides that room. Another hidden cost of talking too much is emotional leakage. Every time you share your plans, you open yourself to interpretation. Even supportive responses carry expectations. Expectations shape emotions. When progress feels slower than what others imagine, discouragement sets in. Silence prevents this emotional drain. It keeps your emotional state stable and focused on effort, not reaction. Working quietly also sharpens self-trust. When no one knows what you're doing, you can't rely on praise to feel capable. You must rely on evidence, what you did today, what you improved, what you learned. This builds a solid relationship with yourself. Over time, self-trust becomes a powerful motivator. You no longer need reassurance because you have proof. Silence strengthens discipline by removing escape routes. Public commitments allow excuses. You can blame timing, misunderstanding, or circumstances. Private commitments remove that option. When you fall short, you know it. When you succeed, you know it. This honesty creates integrity. And integrity produces confidence that does not depend on opinion. There is also a creative advantage to keeping your work private. Creativity thrives in freedom. When people know what you're working on, their ideas and judgments begin to influence your direction. You start adjusting to please or impress. Silence protects originality. It allows you to explore, fail, and refine without interference. This leads to work that is authentic rather than approved. Quiet effort also teaches respect for time. You realize that progress is cumulative, not dramatic. Small actions repeated daily shape outcomes more than sudden bursts of enthusiasm. When no one is watching, you become patient with these small actions. You stop seeking shortcuts and start trusting accumulation. This mindset changes how you approach every area of life. As time passes, the benefits of silence become visible, not through words, but through presence. You carry yourself differently. You speak with clarity. You decide with confidence. People sense the difference before they understand it. They see results before hearing explanations. This is the natural order of influence. When success finally appears, it feels grounded. There is no need to boast because the journey was personal. There is no need to defend because the results are clear. You don't feel the urge to explain how hard it was or how long it took. The work has already spoken. Silence has done its job. Choosing not to tell people what you do is a form of respect toward your future. It acknowledges that becoming something meaningful takes time. It accepts that growth is fragile at first and deserves protection. It understands that attention is temporary, but character is permanent. In the end, silence is not emptiness. It is space. Space to grow, to learn, to fail, and to improve without judgment. And when that space has been used well, it produces a life that does not need explanation. The results stand quietly, confidently, and undeniably on their own. Never tell people what you do, not because you're hiding, but because you're preparing. Not because you're afraid, but because you're focused. Not because you lack belief, but because your belief is strong enough to work in silence. And one day, when the work has compounded, when the effort has matured, when the discipline has paid its dues, your life will make the announcement for you.